We're just a few days into spring training, pitchers and catchers reporting only, and some teams are already losing some key pieces. We'll talk about who those are, why it's good it isn't the Guardians yet, and who are the players the Guardians can afford to lose the least on today's Locked On Guardians.
Tanner Bibee of the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to today's episode of Locked On Guardians. I'm your host, Justin Latta. Hope you're enjoying the return to 5 days a week. Spring training hasn't officially kicked off yet, but we're back. We're talking a lot about a lot of different things. Today, we're going to discuss who the Guardians' most indispensable players are. Not the most important players, but who are the most indispensable players. I'll talk about why there's a difference there. We're going to look at some of the affiliate rosters. We did, a little bit of roster projection last week. So we'll talk about which affiliates are going to be most fun to watch. We'll do a little bit of roster projection for each level. And we'll talk about some of those players that have gone down for other teams. And the Guardians avoided some disasters. Before we get into all that, I am Justin Lamb, your host for today. And I have been covering the Guardians minor league system since 2007. Formerly the editor of Guardians Baseball Insider. Current freelancer at the News Herald and the Morning Journal. My own Substack, nextyearendcleveland.substack.com. Also contributing to Prospects Live. All right, so let's talk about indispensable versus indispensable. Or most important. So you might say, well, Justin, Jose Ramirez is obviously the most important player that the Guardians have, right? They can least afford to lose him. Obviously, there's very little chance that the Guardians will do anything this year or go to the playoffs or compete for the division, whatever, if they don't have Jose Ramirez. If something were to happen to Jose Ramirez, obviously this team would, cease to go anywhere. It'd be a lost season, unfortunately. It would be a disaster for Jose, too, as would lose time in building his Hall of Fame resume, even though he's pretty darn close to getting there. But obviously, if Jose Ramirez goes down, that's a full-scale disaster, and it would require a lot of emergency episodes and a lot of pivoting to God knows what else. But the indispensable piece, what I'm talking about here, is the secondary guys, the guys that make this thing, that make the roster hum, the guys that need to step up the most in order to do things. We know that Jose Ramirez has to be an MVP candidate for this team to compete. He was, a top whatever MVP candidate a year ago. He was one home run away from being a 40-40 player. We know Emmanuel Clase makes things tick in the bullpen a little bit. We'll touch on all those, but most important player, and this is the distinction for MVP, right? This is kind of what separates the argument of MVP, because a lot of people who vote for the most valuable player awards in baseball, you're technically voting for who had the best season, right? You're voting for Aaron Judge's 62 home runs or whatever it is, and you're voting for Justin Verlander's 22-5 record and whatever it was a couple of years ago. You're voting for the guy who had the most dominant statistical season and produced the highest WAR. And that's all well and good. But if you want to take the direction of who's the most valuable player, it's the guy on the roster who that team absolutely needs. It's the supporting cast, right? It's the guy that it's almost like the manager of the year award, like the manager of the year that nobody expected. The team didn't have any expectations of winning, and they won anyway. The MVP is the guy the team can afford to lose most. Obviously, the Yankees can't afford to lose Aaron Judge either. But if you're talking about a guy who you literally took off the team, would be the most important. Obviously, that'd be Jose Ramirez, right? We know that. That if you took Jose Ramirez off the Guardians, this team would be going nowhere. But for the Guardians' sake of things, that's different than most important. We're just going to assume the Guardians can't go without Jose Ramirez. So who does Jose Ramirez need to be his caddy? Now, the Guardians lineup is going to have to be a 1 through 9 approach, right? They don't have the Ohtani, Freeman, Betts 3, whatever. They don't have the Judge, Soto, Stanton, all those guys the Yankees had, right? It's got to be a 1 through 9 approach. But who needs to step up the most behind Jose Ramirez? Because Jose Ramirez is going to get his numbers. Is he going to get walked? Yes, he's going to get walked. If nobody is behind him. I fully expect teams to pitch around Jose Ramirez, because Josh Naylor could be intimidating at first at fourth at times. He had the power threat behind him. You didn't always want to walk Jose to put him on base in front of Josh Naylor, but he could be pitched to. And I expect that respect will go even further below with Carlos Santana. I don't think teams are really going to think that Carlos Santana is the threat that he is. So that means Jose Ramirez is going to get walked a ton this year. I think I would not be surprised if Jose Ramirez sets a new career high in walks this season. Hopefully that means he's not chasing, because we've seen what happens to Jose Ramirez when he doesn't get pitches to hit, is that he gets a little antsy. He wants to hit. He's patient. He won't swing at garbage all the time, but he'll go through stretches where he won't get pitches to hit, and it'll frustrate him, and he'll try to make something happen. And we did see his chase rate go up a little bit last year, and that's also a thing that might be product of an aging profile sometimes, where you start to chase a little bit more because you're starting earlier, vision, all that kind of stuff. Hopefully that isn't the case for Jose. Hopefully he'll realize that teams are going to pitch around him, and he's going to have to trust the other guys to get it done, because I do think he's going to, if he is as patient as he should be this year, he'll get the most walks he's ever had, because I don't think there's a whole lot of intimidation there to pitch to him. Really, there won't be. But it's not Jose Ramirez as the most indispensable player on this team. It's just a given that this team goes nowhere. But for this team to have success offensively this year, the player who I think is the most indispensable hitter in the lineup, to me, is Steven Kwan. And I think the easiest argument for the fact that it's Steven Kwan is that not when he was out, right? He missed the entire month of May, or 9/10 of the month of May, whatever it is. They still scored 10 more runs without him than they did with him. And a lot of that had to do with David Fry going on a heater in the month of May. Josh Naylor had a good month of May. Tyler Freeman had like the one good month of the year he had last year during the month of May, and he stepped up into Steven Kwan's leadoff role. But we saw what happened to the offense when Steven Kwan came back in the second half after the All-Star break and was having back issues, was popping the ball up a lot, was not getting on base. He was essentially a below league average hitter for the first time in his career. That's when the offense really took a spiral, right? They weren't scoring runs. He was not getting on base, and there was just not a lot going on offensively. So I think Steven Kwan is going to be his most indispensable player on the offense. Obviously not named Jose Ramirez. I'm not going to repeat that again, but Steven Kwan to me is the most indispensable player on this offense. This team, in order to score runs this year, has to get on base. That was the problem with this team a year ago, is they did not draw walks. They did not get on base. They had a very aggressive swing profile. Andres Gimenez, aggressive swing profile. Josh Naylor, aggressive swing profile. All these guys are chasers, and it's not that they didn't make contact. This team didn't have issues with strikeouts, but we've talked about on the show over and over again. We've hammered this home, is that the Guardians had approach issues. They didn't walk. They didn't get on base. Teams, they're twofold on offense. Pitchers they still don't, outside of Jose Ramirez, don't have to respect the Guardians hitters as much because they don't hit for as much power, right? Steven Kwan started to tap into that a little bit in the first half last year. We saw him hitting for a little more power, which is what propelled him to the All-Star game, right? In turn, pitchers had to respect him a little bit more. And that actually got him out into a funk a little bit more. The pitchers adjusted to him, didn't pitch him where they knew he would take advantage of them, and he struggled. Now, I think part of that was also health issues, too. I don't know if I'll say it, but I think part of it was, which is why he was on the injured list at the end of the season. But teams aren't going to be scared to pitch to Carlos Santana. Kyle Manzardo still has to prove that. Whoever plays second base has to prove that. Brian Rocchio is not intimidating anybody. Lane Thomas can run into some power, but I think the book's largely out on him. Obviously, he's been around for a while. But it would be well for him to have a good season and a contract year. And then the John Noel thing, he's, again, I didn't bring him up, but, the aggressive swing profile. Teams knew they could throw the ball in and out of the zone to the Guardians last year and get away with it because they didn't have a whole lot of power threats to respect, and B, they knew they were going to chase. This year, it may be a little different. Hopefully Jose Ramirez exercises that patience because he knows teams won't pitch to him. Carlos Santana is typically a very patient hitter. Now, he's not walking like he did in his his prime, obviously. He's at the end of his career. He's still a better, more patient hitter than Josh Naylor is. Juan Brito, if he is the second baseman, which it sounds like everyone believes he's going to get the odds-on crack at it here, has proven to be a patient hitter in the minors. I do think that's someone who has a good understanding of the zone. Juan Brito can be a patient hitter. Brian Rocchio actually did take his share of walks, I will say. And that's important, too, for turning that lineup over 9-2. So that's why I say Stephen Kwan is the most important player on this team, because he's probably you talked about the lineup construction not too long ago and how I would not hit Kwan leadoff this year just for having Santana back and because he's not really a reliable cleanup hitter, but that's probably where he's going to go. I guess we'll see the first couple weeks of spring training how they roll that out. But if Kwan is going to be your leadoff hitter, he has got to be. I think you need the Stephen Kwan of the first half last year. I'm not saying he's got to go nuclear and be a perennial all-star or hit, chase 400 again, but I think he's the most indispensable player because the goal for this team this season coming up has got to be to get on base. They don't have the power threats. They got to run the bases better, which Kwan can do if he's healthy. He's had hamstring issues, which is another reason I'm talking about that. And Gold Glove on defense. Who are you putting in the outfield? The outfield is already very lean, right? It's Lane Thomas in center as of right now. And in right field, it's Noel, Brennan, and maybe DeLauder at some point, hopefully. Stephen Kwan is your one stalwart in the outfield. And we saw how good the offense could be when he was getting on base and he was playing at an all-star level. So to me, on the offensive side of things, Stephen Kwan is the most indispensable hitter. Obviously not named. I'm not going to do it again. I promise I wouldn't do it again. We know what Jose Ramirez is. We know what he does. We know what he means to this team. But for the Guardians to have success offensively in 2025, I think Stephen Kwan is their most indispensable hitter. Let me know if you agree or disagree. If it's somebody else, give me your argument for that. I'll talk about the most indispensable pitchers, the rotation, and the bullpen after this. I'll also get into some affiliate roster projections. We did roster projections for the Major League team last week. I will do it here for the minor league teams, talk about who's going to be fun to watch this year on the rest of today's episode. Baseball season, we know we love to snack during the game, and it's almost here. Look for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious. Crack into a good source of protein with our friends over at Wonderful Pistachios. One of the highest protein nuts, 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you 10% of your daily value. They're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller longer. One of those fun snacks you can have at a baseball game. There's a lot of people eating all kinds of stuff at baseball games. Pistachios are a healthy snack you can have at a baseball game. They're also obviously very delicious and no shells. Wonderful Pistachios makes it easy to grab and go. Get snackin', get crackin' with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Appreciate you guys being here on today's episode of Locked On Guardians with me. If you're enjoying the show, consider becoming an insider. Again, already having some of these conversations with some of our insiders over on the subtext over there. So we love having conversations with them. We are giving our insiders 2 bonus episodes a month. One is kind of a leftover topics type episode where things we don't get to throughout the week or throughout the month, I should say. Some of it will be Guardians related. Some of it might be draft related, for the more hardcore baseball nerds, as it were. And we'll also do a monthly subscriber only mailbag. So sign up to be an insider over there. We have a lot of fun and we've given a lot of news early. The TV stuff we're able to give some of our insiders early as well. And those Nico Horner rumors that appear to be dead now. We'll see about that. And we are still looking for a few more subscribers on YouTube. That one's free. We are at close to under 200 away from, well under 200 away from being at 4,000. Would love to get there before the season starts. Help us get there. You have multiple emails. If you have multiple emails like me, I have multiple just because I use them for signing up for different things, and I try to avoid spamming my inbox. Use one of those to go subscribe to us on YouTube. You don't even have to watch. Just subscribe. It helps us out. All right, so we're talking about most indispensable players on the Guardians. We talked about how Stephen Kwan is the most indispensable hitter for this lineup for offensive success. And let's talk about the bullpen. And even as fickle as bullpens can be, I will say this is an area where I'm going to say I'm both concerned and not as concerned. And here's why. We know that the Guardians bullpen was heavily worked a year ago, and bullpens are fickle year to year, and a lot of things can change. Guys might not be as good this year. And we've said over and over again, the Guardians bullpen could still be good in 2025 and not be anywhere near as good as it was a year ago, which puts the onus on the rotation a little bit more, puts the onus on the offense a little bit more. And I think that's why a lot of projection systems, obviously the offense, we know what it is. We know there's issues there. But I think that's why a lot of the projection systems don't love the Guardians. And that issue to me stems way back to the Royals 10 years ago. Because a lot of the Royals fans was rallying cry was projection systems didn't get it right with the Royals, and they went to back-to-back World Series and won one of them. And I think what it was the bullpen. I don't think it's hard to account for bullpens. Projection systems don't get Emmanuel Clase. Like, they're projecting to have a 3 ERA because he's just so good that projection systems just don't understand. Like, this is not supposed to happen. Guys aren't supposed to be this good. You're not supposed to have a season as good as Cade Smith is because things are supposed to even out. So projection systems, again, I think the Guardians bullpen will be good. I saw Trevor May, by the way, of the former of the Twins, I think the Athletics, a bunch of other teams. He has his own show or has his own media channel, and he was saying that the Guardians might be the third best bullpen in the division. He had the Royals and the Twins above them. Not sure I'm buying that, even if the Guardians bullpen does regress. I still think it's going to be better than theirs, but we shall see. But in the bullpen, like, is it Emmanuel Clase? I'm not as worried because bullpens, even as fickle as they are, can be fixed. The Guardians, look at the 2018 bullpen. Cody Allen in 2018, his arm was cooked. Andrew Miller, cooked. Brian Shaw was already gone to the Rockies, and he was cooked and then, I don't know, defrosted, or I don't know how you want to say that. He came back. But they acquired Oliver Perez. They put some other band-aids on the bullpen, and it was okay. They won the division. I know the division was pretty weak that year, but they put some band-aids on it, and obviously they didn't go very far in the playoffs, but the Astros were also cheating that year. Although Corey Kluber did say in his podcast, which I agree with, is that the Astros did not need to cheat to beat Cleveland that year. It was going to happen anyway. But bullpens can be band-aided over a little bit when they struggle. Obviously, the bullpen is very important to this team for a team that's got questions in the rotation and the offense, which is why it carried a big load last year. So is it Emmanuel Clase in the bullpen? I would be tempted to say yes. You know, we talked about how Jose Ramirez is a given in the offense, but isn't, it needs more guys to kind of stir the lineup up. Having a good closer tends to make things tick better in the bullpen because everything is reversed from there. You know, Clase's got the 9th. But he's so consistent, and that, we saw him break down in the bullpen in the playoffs, right? And even then, they still managed to win some games. To me, I think the obvious answer here is Cade Smith, right? Cade Smith was the unexpected hero of the bullpen a year ago. Guy who didn't know he was going to make the roster until a couple hours before, or the night before the opening day. Cade Smith is the guy I think that is indispensable because it's very, very hard to find a guy to fill that role. Closers are great, and they're important, and they get the saves in the 9th inning. But I think we all know as baseball fans at this point is that saves don't always come in the 9th inning. Saves come in the 5th inning sometimes, or the 6th inning when bases are loaded, or there's 2 on and 1 out, and you're only up by 1. As we saw in the playoffs. Well, we've seen this with Andrew Miller, and now we've seen with Cade Smith. The highest leverage moments, most times, are not coming in the 9th inning. They're coming in the middle of the innings, and there's a reason they don't bring Emmanuel Clase in very often with runners on, and we've seen some goofy things happen with that, unfortunately. But Cade Smith has been trusted to come in with runners on, to start clean innings, to throw multiple innings. This is the guy who you can do that with. when they tried to move Clase into the 2-inning roles or coming in the 8th inning with 2 outs and runners on, that's when he started to struggle. Cade Smith didn't crack until he was, kind of overused at that point, and they weren't letting starters go deep in October. But Cade Smith is the guy that can go 2 innings. He's the guy that can come in with runners on. That's the guy to me is the most indispensable. If Sam Hentges were healthy, I might even say Sam Hentges because, I think Jeff and I both said Sam Hentges a year ago because they didn't have another lefty, and he was a guy who could get lefties and righties out. Tim Herrin, you can make a case for Tim Herrin too, I think, here, because they don't really have a whole lot of lefty help. If Tim Herrin falters, this team is in deep trouble bullpen wise because Eric Sabrowski is your only lefty at that point that you can trust. I'm not saying Tim Herrin is going to do that, like anything's going to happen, but I'm just talking about a scenario here where things do happen to Tim Herrin. It's Eric Sabrowski, who had a very good late run last year, unexpected to Jeff and I. One of the things we got really wrong. But they don't have another lefty. They've got Nikhazy and Allen and Cantillo, who are starters, who one of them could maybe, I don't know. Joey Cantillo had a bullpen role last year in the playoffs, was not great. They need him for depth this year. And, Stephen Vogt bringing him to when he did to New York maybe didn't help. But as far as lefties in the minors, like it's Parker Mashinsky, Andrew Misiazik, and after that, it's a long, long way down. They lost their key lefty in the minor league Rule 5 draft. Kidding. We'll see who gets that deep cut joke. But there's no lefties in the minors if Tim Herrin fails and or something happens to him and Eric Sabrowski is your only lefty, which we saw last year. So it could be Tim Herrin. Could be more indispensable. But I'm going to go Cade Smith for now because Cade Smith can get both sides of the plate out, and he's very important. All right, that's the bullpen. Let's get to the rotation after this. We'll talk about who the most indispensable pitcher in the Guardians starting rotation is, and I'll also do a little bit of roster projection, and I'll talk about who the most exciting Guardians affiliate is looking like it's going to be to start 2025. Hey, all you wonderful fans and everydayers, thank you for making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day wherever you get podcasts. We're free on every app, obviously. We're free on YouTube. You can get the ad-free version. You can become an insider for a little bit more. If you want some bonus content, that's in the show description. I talked about that before. But make sure you are liking and subscribing. Make sure you are hitting the bell to get notified when we have new videos. Make sure you are auto-downloading to your audio platforms as well, so you get that automatically every single day. We'd really, really appreciate that if you're enjoying what you're hearing. And, if you got time, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. I still want to call it iTunes sometimes. Apple Podcasts. That always helps the algorithm a little bit as well. We'd love to get a little more visibility and grow the insiders and grow the everydayers to have this great community. Really appreciate that. Very important for me right now to have you guys as listeners and as a community right now before baseball season starts. I will say that I appreciate each and every one of you. All right. Who is the most indispensable pitcher in the rotation? Now, I said for offense, it's not Jose Ramirez. And I said for the bullpen, it's not Emmanuel Clase. So you think I'm not going to say it's Tanner Bibee because I said, duh, obviously Jose Ramirez is most important and nothing gets done without him. And even if Emmanuel Clase, if something happens, the bullpen still has pieces and they still have other things they can rely on. In the rotation, I don't think there's any getting around this one. I am really excited about Luis Ortiz. I'm hoping I'm not wrong about that. I guess we'll see more as spring training goes on. I'm really excited for Luis Ortiz. But everybody in this rotation, once again, is a question mark. Ben Lively pitched the most innings he ever has. The Guardians did not trust him on the postseason roster until Alex Cobb went down, who we're going to talk about later on in the show or towards the end. I have to get our daily Alex Cobb reference in at this point. Gavin Williams, huge wild card. Could be great. And might say he's the most indispensable because if he has a great season, then this rotation should be in good shape. Well, I shouldn't say that, but it's much better if Gavin Williams delivers on his promise, right? But I don't think there's any getting around that Tanner Bibee is the most indispensable pitcher. It doesn't work like this to me like it does the offense and the bullpen. And I know I said for offense, obviously the best player is the most important, and that's Jose Ramirez. But they needed Jose Ramirez. They needed Stephen Kwan to help him out and do the things he does to make the offense viable. In the rotation, I think it's different because everybody's a question mark right now. Everybody in that rotation has a question mark. The only guy that doesn't is Tanner Bibee. And we saw it, and maybe I was going to say maybe I'm overblowing this because this team won the division a year ago with a very, very suspect subpar rotation. So maybe I might say I'm overblowing it by saying that they need Tanner Bibee, but he kind of drug them to the playoffs and Ben Lively a little bit to the last year anyway. But I guess I'm more questioning is you can't do it 2 years in a row. I don't believe this team 2 years in a row can have a subpar rotation and make the playoffs. I just don't see the stars aligning that way for them in 2025. Again, it's a very difficult thing to do back-to-back years. And I think that's why they were so dead set on going out and getting a Luis Ortiz and getting a Slade Ciccone. And maybe it's part of why they signed guys like Vince Velasquez and Kobe Allard, even though I don't have any faith in either of those guys. Maybe it's why they rostered Doug Nikhazy, right? They went out and added pitching because they knew they needed it. But and they also brought back Shane Bieber. If Tanner Bibee is not Tanner Bibee this year, whenever Shane Bieber gets back, it won't matter. Because I don't think with the way the offense is, and I don't think anybody else in rotation as of now, things could happen. They could surprise. You know, Ben Lively was a surprise a year ago. But a year ago, they were relying on, and I think the rotation is going to be better. So maybe it won't be as much pressure on Tanner Bibee. But until otherwise, because a year ago we were counting on starts every fifth day from Ben Lively and Xavier Curry and Carlos Carrasco. So maybe I'm overblowing it with Tanner a little bit here. But every rotation needs that stopper. They need that guy when there's a losing streak to come out and pitch well and give his team a chance to win. And for the most of his career, going back to 2023, that's been Tanner. And I think at least for the first part of the year, until we see what this team does with Luis Ortiz, till we see the health of Gavin Williams, till we see if Ben Lively can be a stable starter and whatever Tristan McKenzie ends up being or whoever's the fifth starter, I think Tanner Bibee's got to come out of the gate and he has got to be the clear leader of the rotation. Because waiting around for Shane Bieber won't matter if he's not. I think Tanner, there's no getting around this one, saying that obviously they can't win without Jose, and obviously Manuel Clase is an all-star for a reason. And I'm not saying Tanner's got to be an all-star this year, although I think he could be. Although pitching is hard to crack in the American League. But I think this team doesn't go anywhere, doesn't compete, can't hold its own without Tanner being who Tanner Bibee's been so far at the very least. Maybe even better. But I don't think there's any getting around that. I think Tanner has to be as good as he was a year ago. I think this team needs him to be the stop every fifth day, keep that rotation in line, save the bullpen, just like he was a year ago. And I think the rotation will be better. But I think in the case of this, Tanner is the guy at the top of this thing they need to make things go. All right, that took a lot more time than I thought it would. So let's just really quickly talk about some of the affiliates. I'll get into that. I think just very quickly looking at things, Akron is going to be a lot of fun. That's where Travis Bazzana should start. Akron should have majority of Lake County's roster a year ago that won the championship. They should have Tugboat, obviously. I think that'll be a lot of fun for them. But I think Lynchburg, once again, is the team to look out for, at least to start the year, which means Lake County, again, the second half of the year might be the most fun. But that really also depends on the draft and how the Guardians approach this. Remember, the Guardians are very, very conservative when it comes to moving players along. The fact that Alex Clemmie was in Lynchburg last year before they traded him was only due to the fact about the rule changes, right? It was only due to the fact that you couldn't stash, 180 players or whatever it was, 200 players, and fill out all your affiliates and keep guys in Arizona or Florida for X amount of time. Because the Guardians wanted to build good habits and take things slow. Now it doesn't happen anymore. Now you got to move guys along a little bit quicker by shrinking the minor leagues to 175. So that if you're not aware, you can only have 175 domestic players in the U.S. Now, the Dominican Republic, that's totally different rules for Major League Baseball. But from Arizona to Columbus, the Guardians can only have 175 active players in the organization. So that's why you saw Alex Clemmie at low A last year, when normally he probably wouldn't have been. So I think that will force them this year to move guys like Braylon Dowdy and Chase Mobley and Joey Oki and Cameron Sullivan to that level. And you'll have other draft picks that are coming along. There's a chance that Luis Morejo starts there again. He's really fun, right? Welbin Francisco probably starts in Lynchburg, goes to Lake County. Jackson Humphreys needs a rebound year. We'll talk more about him in the future. Rafe Schlesinger could be a lot of fun, I think. Caden Favors could be a lot of fun. A lot of the draft guys this year will split time between Lake County and Lynchburg, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Lake County should also have Josh Hartle, should have Michael Kennedy, the two guys in that trade with Pittsburgh. So I think Lake County by far is going to be probably the best team. You'll have Travis Pazan at Akron. Ralphie probably starts at Lake County again. Kafis will probably start at Akron again just for a little bit. So I think Akron will be a lot of fun still, but I would bet on Lake County and in Lynchburg still being kind of the most interesting affiliates to start the year. Maybe it's fun if you're more of a long-term prospect person. Like obviously Bazana and then Travis DeLauder or Chase DeLauder will probably be at AAA to start the year. Whatever, maybe not. But AAA is always the holdover thing. So I think Lake County and Lynchburg is where things right now are looking to be the most fun. We'll see how that develops throughout the spring and where guys go. We'll visit that more in depth as spring training goes along on the podcast. Real quickly, news related, we have to get our Alex Cobb update in. The Guardians, they avoided some disasters, didn't they? We found out pretty much the first day of spring training for most teams that Spencer Horwitz is going to miss some time with a wrist injury. We tried to talk ourselves into that being a big addition for the Guardians at second base in that trade with the Blue Jays, and they flipped him. So they got out of that one. I suppose they couldn't have known that was coming. But in retrospect, I still like that trade a lot more at this point. So Spencer Horwitz, Guardians avoid disaster there. And again, Alex Cobb, 15, 16, whatever million it is for the Tigers. Right hip inflammation. Pitching is so expensive. 38-year-old Alex Cobb, $15 million. He's going to miss the start of the year with right hip inflammation. Now, he's already had hip surgery, and then he had a shoulder problem last year. Then he had a fingernail problem. Get your pitchers locked up while they're young before this stuff kind of happens. Get the best years out of them and pay them what they're worth now. And then when they're in their mid-30s, let them go make money like the Cobbs and the Verlanders somewhere else. Nobody is advocating for the Guardians to spend money on Alex Cobb. Shane Bieber is a special story, obviously. There's a little bit difference there, even though he has a lot of leverage with them right now. But this is an argument to get your players into age 31 and 32 and 33. Pay them what you can up front or backload it and trade them anyway. But, make sure you're getting more than those minimum 6 years out of them that you can cost control before they hit the open market. And then that money that you've got them locked into makes them just as valuable in the trade market. Cost certainty is very important. It's going to be even more important after the next lockout, which Jeff and I are going to talk about in a future Locked On Guardians Leftovers episode, is the lockout that's probably coming at the end of next season. Get your guys locked up before the lockout now, and you either have a great value of those guys right now instead of market value, or they become valuable in the trade market with cost certainty, and you trade them anyway, like they did with Andres Gimenez, or they did with Josh Naylor, even though it was an extension. No one wants the Guardians to sign Alex Cobb. We want the Guardians to extend the young players they developed that we know are good into their early 30s, into their slightly less early 30s. Not quite my age. I'm 36. But like 32, 33. Instead of just bringing up a 24 and saying, well, by age 30, they're gone. And you can still trade them at the end if you want. Because like I said, the cost certainty makes them valuable. And it'll be more valuable after the lockout as prices continue to go up, as evidenced by Alex Cobb. Get them into their, just to get a year or two extra control out of them now. Lock into the cost certainty. That's where the money should go. You can sign your Josh Bells and your Mike Zaninos or whatever, or Paul Sewalds. Get the guys locked in that you've developed, that you can count on, because they won't go to market right now. And you still have the option of trading them later, because that's what they do. No one wants them to sign Alex Cobbs, and that's another bullet the Guardians dodged. Still can't believe that. All right, once again, please subscribe, review, leave us a review, sign up to be a Locked On Guardians Insider. You can also email the show at loguardianshow@gmail.com. If you are not a social media or YouTube user, and you're just listening on audio, we do want to hear from you. You are still part of the show. You are still part of the community. And we appreciate you no matter where you're listening from. No matter what platform that is, no matter what country that is, we do appreciate that, and we would love to interact with you any way possible, whether that's questions, reviews, comments. I think we're going to do a thing this year where we talk about comment of the week or question of the week. I think we're going to do that. So that'll be something we do on this year's Locked On Guardians during the seasons. We're going to talk about more comments and more questions throughout the week and turn that into something. So looking forward to more interaction with all of you as the season goes on. And I think tomorrow, Thursday, I should say today, you're listening to this on Thursday, the Guardians are making some players available for interviews, both in Arizona and on Zoom back in Ohio. I'm going to try to jump on that. So we will get some news from Guardians players. Not all of them, but some of them will be available on interviews. So we should get some news to talk about. So we'll talk about what we learned from the first media availability with players of spring training. And I know not everybody loves the draft. I know we've gotten comments saying they tune out when we do draft stuff. But Friday is the start of Division I college baseball. So I think it's only appropriate that Jeff and I talk a little college baseball and a little draft as it relates to the Guardians. We'll try not to dominate too much with it because it's early, and I know the Guardians own the first pick this year. So it's not as interesting, but I think we'll pepper a little bit in. So we'll talk about some observations from the first media day with Guardians players. We'll talk about some other headlines, and we'll pepper in a little bit of college/draft stuff. Thank you all for listening today and every day, wherever you are. Appreciate you. Please, again, tune in wherever you can and leave reviews wherever you can and leave comments wherever you can. And in the meantime, go, Guardians, go. Don't get hurt before spring training starts officially.